I want you to picture this: a woman with a clipboard and a smile that smells like perfume and contempt, telling me I have 15 days to tear down my grandfather's 103-year-old cabin or pay fines so steep they'd make a bank blush. I laughed out loud because honestly, what were they going to do? Send a landscaper with a wrecking ball? But her laugh was sharper than mine, and the way she hit redial on her phone told me this was not a bluff. My name is Garrett Blackwood. I've been an FBI agent for 28 years, cyber division, which sounds less romantic than it is, and after a marriage that splintered and finally broke, I inherited a slice of Montana that smells like pine pitch and old rope my grandfather's cabin on Whitefish Lake. 2.5 acres, hand-hewn logs, a fieldstone fireplace that'll swallow a man and spit him out warm, and a dock where my family learned to fish, swear, and make bad decisions for generations. That cabin is older than most of the rules the HOA tried to shove down my throat. The woman was Bryn Ashford, president of the Whitefish Estates HOA, and she walked up my dock like she owned the water. She read me a packet of violations that, if you printed them and stacked them, would feed a moose for a year, mismatched chinking an old woodpile, a pickup truck older than her sense of entitlement. 15 days to conform, 15 days to erase the authentic parts of my life so my property could look like a catalog home staged for people who clip coupons to donate to charity while their lawyers invoice for hours. She sweet-talked it, of course. Community standards, she said, like a prayer. Protecting property values, she said, like gospel. And then the finer point, the finger, the diamond ring, the suggestion that maybe I'd be happier somewhere that better matched my background. Classy. I should have seen then how far she was willing to go. A certified letter arrived 3 days later like a paper guillotine: fines, deadlines, threats. I did what a professional investigator does when someone threatens you. I went to the courthouse. Basement records smell like time and regret. And under fluorescent lights, I dug through deeds and dust until I found the one thing Bryn hadn't bothered to look up: my grandfather's original deed, recorded in 1923, a territorial gift clause that essentially grandfathered my cabin out of any HOA bullshit that came later. But the deeper I dug, the uglier the picture got. The HOA covenants from 2019 explicitly excluded pre-existing and historically significant structures from enforcement. In plain terms, Bryn was serving extortion letters to people with legal protections. And it wasn't just me. Mrs. Sterling, 83, sharp as a tack and kind as old leather, showed me a notice demanding she rip out a vegetable garden she'd tended for decades. Jim Hartley, a retired sailor, got fined for a swing set. Patterns emerged: older folks, working families, people who'd been here before the glossy marketing brochures and the same handwriting of harassment. When I started following the money and personnel, things moved from petty HOA tyrant to organized operation. Names and payments blinked like warning lights. Pine Summit Development Shell Company's consulting fees to county officials. Bryn's community vision suddenly had a cost center. Every harassment action had profit motives tied to a developer that bought up distressed lakefront land to build a resort. My grandfather's cabin sat on the last stretch of shoreline they needed. And then here's the twist that changes everything. Her husband showed up on my dock, not as an ally, but as a chess piece. Marcus Ashford was an FBI agent assigned to my region's financial crimes unit. He'd been sitting in our morning briefs while his wife orchestrated the harassment campaigns. The irony would have been funny if it didn't mean betrayal. He looked at me that afternoon like a man who'd just learned the ground he stood on was quicksand. That moment mattered because it forced a choice. Would he be a husband covering for his wife or a lawman living up to the oath he took? I could have immediately taken this to my office and made it personal, but that's not how you build an ironclad case. I built a documentary chain of custody. Time-stamped photos, GPS-tagged videos, recorded conversations, neighbor affidavits, bank transfers, every piece organized like a courtroom exhibit. Mrs. Sterling, the librarian with a librarian's memory, and a box of evidence that rattled with decades of documentation, became my secret weapon. She'd been photographing incidents, saving voicemails, logging dates that would later read like a timeline of organized malice. Bryn escalated, of course. She tried to bribe an inspector, filed anonymous complaints with the health department, staged fake inspections, and even had people impersonate federal officers to intimidate naturalized citizens. In a move that'd make a screenwriter jealous, she staged midnight operations, planting fake survey stakes, breaking into my shed, and slipping falsified permits inside, then presented those falsified documents as proof at HOA meetings. She thought she was clever. She forgot to account for cameras neighbors who kept their eyes open and a prosecutor who loves corruption cases. We laid a trap. We organized the neighborhood like a small platoon. Gym surveillance. Mrs. Sterling's archives, neighbors ready to testify, and a county prosecutor who saw the pattern and wanted in. We quietly invited the press, coordinated with county law enforcement, and we helped the Historical Society expedite official landmark designation for my cabin, a legal shield I'd rather not have needed, but I wasn't going to hand that shoreline to people who treated property like a spreadsheet line item. The Night Brins crew tried to alter my property evidence. I recorded it all. Infrared cameras, directional microphones, timestamps that couldn't be refuted, every step of their midnight performance captured. The next day at the public HOA meeting where she'd planned to browbeat us into submission, I played the videos. The room went from small talk to silence to a wave of disbelief. There was Bryn on video, setting fake stakes and planting documents, each action dovetailing with a wire transfer, each bribe attempt matching a recorded conversation. County prosecutors leaned forward, microphones picked up whispered confessions, and Marcus stood in the back, the betrayal raw on his face. Anyone who has spent time in courtrooms knows how fast hubris falls. Bryn's defense melted under scrutiny. She tried to blame me that I was abusing my badge, that I'd weaponized power. But the recordings, the bank records, the emails between Pine Summit and county offices, and the eyewitness accounts formed a cord around her lies. Once you let evidence breathe in public, truth becomes a contagion. What followed was messy and beautiful. Arrests, media coverage, legal filings that read like a thriller novel. Pine Summit paid restitution, county officials resigned in disgrace, and Bryn pleaded guilty after prosecutors painted an uncomfortably clear picture of a small criminal enterprise built on greed and cruelty. She got federal time enough for vindication, not enough to undo the fear she'd sown, and a string of convictions closed a chapter that could have gutted our lakeshore. But the real victory wasn't sentences or checks. It was what rose from the ashes. The Whitefish Heritage Foundation was born from restitution, money, scholarships for local kids, legal clinics, teaching property rights, and grants to help families defend themselves from predatory practices. Mrs. Sterling teaches documentation classes now. Jim Hartley developed a neighborhood defense toolkit that's been shared with communities across a dozen states. The cabin itself was restored with respect, not sanitized. It became a place where history lives and kids learn how to tie a proper fishing knot. If there's a moral here, and I don't like moralizing like a preacher on Sunday, it's this: authority looks respectable until you follow the money, and power often hides in paperwork until people with quiet courage unpeel it. The protection of community isn't a clipboard and a packet of rules. It's neighbors who show up for one another, who document, who refuse to be bullied into silence. Protecting a family legacy isn't about freezing the past. It's about creating a future worth fighting for. On clear mornings now, I walk down to the dock with a coffee that tastes like burned bridge roast and watch loons slice the lake. There's a hush that comes after a storm, not empty, but full of something earned. The trials wrapped up faster than anyone expected, mostly because the conspirators kept confessing to more and more when faced with their own paper trail. Pine Summit dissolved, officials resigned, the community learned how to spot a predator in a suit disguised as stewardship. So tell me, where do you draw the line between protecting a neighborhood and weaponizing its rules for profit? Have you seen an HOA go too far, or a small group target a family for gain? Drop your wildest HOA or Karen meltdown stories in the comments, and tell me what state you're watching from, because greedy audacity like that doesn't belong to Montana alone. Share your experience, your outrage, or even a tip, and if you have documents, save them. Take pictures. Archive everything. If one old cabin taught me anything, it's that the kind of justice that sticks is the kind you build together with patience, evidence, and a stubborn refusal to let greed write your history. Now go tell someone what happened in your neighborhood. Let's make it harder for the next Bryn to find a quiet place to hide.